As we came through the woods from the Brotherton property, we came onto the Dyer property, and then we turned right and came over here. Bushrod Johnson comes through the woods, and in his report, in my opinion, I think the best OR report of some of the action here is Bushrod Johnson. He says, "The scene now presented was unspeakably grand. The resolute and impetuous charge, the rush of our columns sweeping out of the shadows and gloom of the forest into the open fields flooded with sunlight, the glitter of arms, the onward rush of artillery and mounted men, the retreat of the foe, the shouts of the hosts of our army, the dust, the smoke, the noise of firearms and whistling balls, grape shot or bursting shells, made up a battle scene of unsurpassed grandeur." He comes onto the Dyer Field with his 2 lead brigades, and then Hood comes up to him, and Hood says, "Go ahead and keep ahead of everything," he says in his OR. Bushrod Johnson then starts pushing forward directly that direction. His immediate objective is then going to be the Dyer Road. I forget the name of it right now. Dyer Field Road, which is over there. So he's moving this way across the field. Now to the left of Johnson is Hindman. Hindman also began his attack shortly after Bushrod Johnson penetrated where the gap is. Hindman starts assaulting the divisions of Davis, the Union divisions of Davis and Sheridan, and he starts shoving them into that corner over there where Van Cleve is. And you can see that on your on one of the maps there. I think it's actually on the second, the one with the Google, actually the big Google map in the beginning. Yeah, this one here, the colored one, but with the lots of colors. He shoves these divisions back in that corner over there. So Hindman is clearing everything to the left of Bushrod Johnson and shoving the Union over that way. Bushrod Johnson's cutting across toward the Dry Valley Road, and those Union elements, they got to get out of there or they're going to be cut off. So they start making their way up around, and they're going to go toward the McFarland Gap because they at least know the McFarland Gap is the only way out of here. Rosecrans panics. He gets on a horse and he rides up to Chattanooga to get out on the wire, put out on the wire that this has turned into a complete rout and a defeat, and starts setting up some kind of defense in Chattanooga. So that's what he does. The only Union unit that's thinking about doing something is one of the cavalry elements that has these Sharps carbines, and Secretary of War Dana is out here too, and he comes up to that cavalry element and he says, "I need you to give me an escort up to Chattanooga. This whole thing's falling apart." So this cavalry officer, who is contemplating attacking the left flank of Longstreet's Schwerpunkt, his column, has to take some time and calm the man down, and then pick some guys to escort him up to Chattanooga, and then he's going to contemplate whether to attack it. Once he gets that done, he looks at this constant flow of gray troops pouring out of the woods into the Brotherton property, and then coming onto the Dyer Field, and he says, "I'm not going to do that. That would be hopeless." So he moves around as well. So those units, all the Union units to the left of Bushrod Johnson and the column, are trying to make their way up this way. The only one who's not running, who still belongs to the Union right, is Thomas, and he's over here on the Kelly property. So Bushrod Johnson is swinging, is coming across this way, and then the first units of the Virginia brigades start to angle this way. General Longstreet had gone with not Breckinridge, but the Corps commander who had Preston and Stuart. Well, that Corps commander is kind of out of business today because Longstreet has retained his division of Preston as a reserve, and Stuart is over here, is on the far right of the Confederate left wing. So he's riding with Longstreet, wants to see what's the situation. I haven't heard anything as far as what's going on with the other wing. He rides over into the woods to see if there's any enemy units coming to threaten him. He sees there aren't any, and then he comes back over here. He rides on this field, and Bushrod Johnson had sent at noon one of his staff officers to go find General Longstreet and give him a situation report. He finds General Longstreet and brings him over into this area and links him up with Bushrod Johnson. One of an aide puts down a blanket, and they start serving some food. Longstreet asks Bushrod Johnson to sit down with him. They start eating some chow. At that point, about halfway through, Longstreet is summoned by General Bragg. He wants to know what's going on over here. General Bragg has left the Confederate right wing under Polk and come over here to see what's going on. He's disgusted that the whole en echelon attack miscarried. It never occurred. He comes over to his headquarters a little bit further this way from where he was earlier this morning. He moved it a little bit forward behind the Brotherton property, and then Longstreet goes and finds him. Longstreet tries to articulate to him that we have ruptured the Union line and collapsed the entire Union right. So we're winning this battle. We're doing well. We're not doing poorly. Can you give me some reinforcements to exploit the success on this side instead of, wasting them against a firm defense on the other Union wing? In fact, the division of Claiborne has not yet even fully been engaged, so he's thinking about that one. Well, Bragg is extremely angry about the whole thing miscarrying on the other side. He doesn't really comprehend what Longstreet's telling him. He doesn't want to give him anything in the way of reinforcements. Longstreet also, I think he makes mention of cavalry. Bragg has 1/5 of his army is cavalry. He's got 2 cavalry elements. He's got Wheeler down there on the far left, and he's got Nathan Bedford Forrest on the far right. He's not using them at all. This would be a perfect opportunity to do so. He could do all kinds of things with them. They could come around here and get on the gaps and clog up block the gaps, and that would probably sow lots of panic in the Union Army. None of that happens. So Longstreet is trying to tell him that things are going well. We have to reinforce success. Try and do that, sir, but it doesn't happen. Longstreet then comes back over here, goes back to where he was at the lunch site, and he's going to have to try and do what he can with what he has to shove the Union off and try and get around them. And if they're lucky, they can maybe bag the whole thing if they can get onto the gaps before the Union starts to extricate themselves. So he tells Bushrod Johnson, he goes back to see him, and he tells him to pivot your units to the right and start assaulting in this direction, in the direction of Snodgrass Hill on that portion of it over there. Hood, by this time, has started moving some of the brigades in this direction, the Virginia brigades in this direction, and Longstreet tells them, start assaulting Thomas. He's hoping that the brigade of Hershaw and Humphreys, they come out of there, the 5th echelon, are going to slam into them. Maybe even though they're 2 brigades, maybe that's the coup de grace. If we violently attack them, maybe Thomas it'll set his forces to fleeing as well. Well, they try to do that. They attack Thomas, but Thomas stands firm and he doesn't budge. So he brings in more units and they try to reform and they attack Thomas again. As Hood is starting to bring Kershaw forward and he's going to go and talk to Bushrod Johnson and he's trying to coordinate all this, he takes a mini ball in the leg, which is on the other side of these trees over here. So this is the wounding site where General Hood was taken down. So he's removed from the battlefield. He's evac'd over back toward where Reed's Bridge is. They have an aid station back there, and they remove his leg just below the hip. So he's out of commission. So the tactical commander of this attack formation is now taken off the field, and this is going to slow down some of the Confederate momentum. So they got to figure out the chain of command and who's going to take over next. Of course, Longstreet gets involved and starts pushing some of all of the 5 Virginia brigades to start attacking in this direction here and start putting the pressure on Thomas. And then Bushrod Johnson is starting to reform. Now, one of the things that Hood did, he told Bushrod Johnson, get Hindman over here as well to support you. once he's cleared all of the Union to the left, bring him over here and get him engaged as well. The reason he's asking Bushrod Johnson to do that is because Hindman took a fragment, an artillery shell fragment, earlier in the morning, and he was still leading his division with a wound, but it was starting to bother him now. He was starting to become very painful and he couldn't continue. So Hood tells him to get Hindman's units engaged and involved, and he comes over here and then he gets wounded himself. Bushrod Johnson starts moving the brigades of Hindman in with his, and he's got to rearrange that. He's also taken over, captured an artillery battery and a whole bunch of wagons up in this area, so he's downloading all kinds of ammunition, spreading it around, taking advantage of it. He has to spend about an hour getting all this stuff cross-leveled and getting the 3 brigades of Hindman's division in with his division. So Bushrod Johnson is now sort of a de facto corps level commander because he's commanding 2 divisions worth of guys, and he's going to start units, and he's going to start assaulting this way on Snodgrass Hill. So I'm going to have to cut it short here. We're not going to have time for Snodgrass Hill before lunch. We'll make a decision on what we're going to do at the restaurant. I'll take a minute or two for any questions at this point. But I wanted to explain, what happened to the attack column as they after they came out and they had exploited the hole. Yes, sir. Yeah, my understanding is that the Park Service, everywhere where there are these battlefields, are trying to, cut the trees down and put fields in where there are fields, and make sure and leave the forests where there were forests. So I assume the Park Service could answer that better than me. But my answer is I think that the way they've got the trees and the open area set up is it's supposed to be exactly how it was during the battle. So. Bragg was back behind after Johnson comes on here and drives toward the Dry Valley Road, and the Virginia brigades are coming this way now. He's just behind the Brotherton cabin somewhere in the woods back there. I don't know the exact location, but I understand that, remember we drove by the thing that said Bragg's headquarters? I think he had moved it a little bit forward, but he wasn't up here. One of the problems is he didn't come over here to see what the heck was really going on. I don't know why he didn't want to believe Longstreet. I mean, I guess because he was caught in a haze of anger about the other side having miscarried in the morning.